Hello there, you're listening to The Powell Movement.
Welcome to another episode of The Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I just spent a week in Squaw Valley, and man, did I time it well. They got 8.5 feet while I was in town, and I had two of the best ski days I've had in years. I headed to Squaw for the McConkey Classic, which is arguably the most important event in skiing. But when I got there, I met up with Roy Tuscany, who runs the High Fives Foundation, and he had an event going on called Military to the Mountains. And I can't tell you how inspiring that was to me. I went out on the hill with a bunch of guys who are missing limbs. There were some of our veterans who were injured in battle, and these guys had no fear whatsoever. Half of them had been blown up, and they wanted us to take them places that they really should not have been, and they paid for it. There were a lot of slams, but these guys had no fear whatsoever. So when we get back down to the base, I'm sitting around with the guys, and half the crew that I was skiing with are popping their legs off. When I saw them pulling off prosthetics, I realized how easy my life was. I mean, those guys have every excuse in life to be down, but they were so positive, and I was sitting there complaining about my feet being cold. I've never claimed to be a strong person, but I really understand that I'm very weak after watching what these guys went through and how much fun they had on the mountain. Speaking of things that aren't strong, well, my next guest comes from France, but he lives in America. And I almost didn't put him on the show because of his accent, but that was last year, and his accent has gotten way better. My guest is Matthias Giraud, and he goes by the internet persona of the Super Frenchie. And our conversation is pretty interesting. While you'd think we talk about doing things the right way, we mostly talk about doing things the wrong way in the world of base jumping. French or not, Matthias has a great story and an awesome attitude. Before we get into Matthias' story, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement and share my posts. And I will say that I've noticed that sharing posts is something that you don't like to do, but I need more people to hear about the show and for brands to realize the future of their magazine spend is in the internet. But enough of my rant. I need to thank some people. First, I need to thank Sherry McConkey and the Shane McConkey Foundation and all the people in Squaw Valley that party their faces off for throwing the most important event in skiing and making it incredible year after year. I'm talking about the McConkey Classic. I also need to thank my amazing sponsors. They are Evo, RESQWATER, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Unofficial Networks. They make the show happen. Now, let's talk to one of my favorite guys from one of my least favorite places, Matthias Giraud. What's your day like today?
Today I was supposed to go skiing, and there's this huge line to go up to Bachelor because it's been dumping the last couple of days, and now it's Bluebird. And I unfortunately turned around because I was like, dude, I'm not going to drive an hour to go skiing.
You live in Bend, so how long does it normally take from your house to get to the mountain?
Normally it takes me like 25 minutes to go up there. So it's really convenient. You journey, even if it's like an icy day, you just drive 25 minutes, ski for an hour or two and go home, and you spend less time in your car than you spend on the slopes. But today it was going to be the opposite of that. So I didn't feel like going up.
How's your season been ski-wise? Have you got many days?
Yeah, I've been skiing quite a bit, actually. It took a while to turn on, but finally it's on. So I've been skiing POW the last week. It's been amazing. And until then, I've been skiing, probably 5 times a week, no problem. But it's been just ripping groomers fast. Yeah, just waiting for the snow to settle in the Alps before I head back there in March. So just training and staying current on my skiing.
They are getting crushed in the Alps right now. Or this whole season's been pretty amazing over there.
Man, it's been absolutely insane. Like Zermatt got 3 meters of snow in 24 hours, which is like 10 feet or something. It's insane. Chamonix has been getting pounded. My home mountain is at kind of like a lower elevation. The top of the ski area is about 8,000 feet. So we've been getting a little bit of rain, but quite a bit of snow. But lately, I mean, we've had fractures that were like, 2.5 meters deep. So
damn,
it's been definitely gnarly over there. So, but I think another couple weeks and everything should settle again, and then it's time to go back there and get crazy.
And speaking of back there, where are you born and raised? You're from France. And I know you as the Super Frenchie, and that's been your personality. So everybody knows you're French if you can't tell by the accent, which I'm sure everyone can. But where are you from?
So originally I was born in Normandy, an hour from Paris. really far from the mountains.
There's some nice beaches in Normandy.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is where the Americans saved our butts, you know. We love Americans in Normandy.
And that's the only part of France they love us?
I'm not going to venture in that subject.
Okay.
No, I mean, if you go to Paris, it's a big city with angry people around that take the subway to go to work every day. So they don't like anybody up there, you know.
Okay.
And then other regions in France have very strong local cultures. You know, you go to the Alps, this region is called Savoie, and so they treat themselves like they think of themselves as Savoyard, which means the people from Savoie, and they think of themselves as from this region before they even think of themselves as French. So you have all these strong, very strong localized cultures, and as a result, it would be kind of like, you know, a surfer trying to move to Hawaii who's not born there. Well, you're gonna have to pay your dues and spend a lot of time there to be accepted. And the Alps are the same. There's that local pride and love of their mountains, and you have to spend your time and pay your dues. And once you're accepted, it's for life. But until then, you know, whether you're French or American, it doesn't really matter. You're gonna have to pay your dues. So
Okay, so you're from Normandy.
yeah.
How long do you live in Normandy, and how far is that from the mountains?
So Normandy is about 7 or 8 hours from the Northern Alps, and so I was born there, moved out of there when I was maybe 8 years old. My parents moved to south of France in a place called Avignon, and Avignon used to be the city of the popes before they moved to the Vatican. It's kind of like an old medieval city. It's south of France, still no mountains. I didn't really like living there, but it was only a 3.5 hour drive then to the Alps. And so I would go to the Alps every weekend, every holiday, whether it was winter or summer. So in the winter, I would go skiing, and in the summer, I would literally work in the fields and help my friends that were farmers and just kind of live that mountain lifestyle. Eventually, my parents, you know, they sold their second home that they had there. It was definitely getting pretty costly for them to keep it. But I was really hooked on skiing by then, so I got accepted in a race academy up in the Alps. So then I lived with friends up there because there wasn't really a boarding school program. But I lived in the Alps and was able to race and pay my dues this way.
So your family had a second home in the south of France. What do your parents do? Are they rich? It just sounds like if you're going to a boarding school and you have second homes in ski areas, do you come from money?
Well, not really. I mean, I live comfortably. You know, my dad was a doctor, but a doctor in France is not like a doctor in America. You know what I mean? It is, you know, socialized medicine, things like that, which comes with good things, but it also comes with less profit for doctors, you know. A doctor in America is definitely making a really, really good living. And in Europe, it's like, yeah, you live comfortably, but you're not loaded.
What kind of car did your dad drive?
My dad drove an old Peugeot 206. Anyway, they sold their house in north of France, and then we literally rented an apartment in south of France. But they had this house in the Alps that they've had forever, you know, and so it was kind of like the family home where we would go back. And so when they sold it, it crushed my soul. You know, I was 12, and I was like, I totally, you know, understand that, you know, money is tight and you got to make some smart decisions. But for me, it was just so crushing. But at the same time, I think it just fueled my desire even more to do stuff in the mountains, you know. And then boarding school in the Alps, I didn't have to pay for it. It's through the public school system. You have a ski academy program or race academy program through the public school system. And so I just lived with friends that had, you know, an extra room, and they had kids about my age, and they were like, yeah, cool, just come and live with us. And then I raced through the local team, and that's the thing, you know, the skiing is taken very seriously in the Alps. So you have a lot of help, I guess, from the local community, so kids can ski for free. You have a free season pass. You go to a ski team for free as long as you're accepted, as long as you can earn a spot on the team, and as long as you're accepted in the public school there, because there are different schools that you can go to. But as long as you're accepted in the program, then everything is taken care of. You don't really have to pay a dime out of pocket. It's pretty nice.
Score one for France right there.
For sure.
Brothers and sisters, do you have any of those growing up?
Yeah, I had 3 sisters. My oldest sister is 12 years older than me. Then I had 2 middle sisters that are twins. And one, unfortunately, passed away a long time ago now. She passed away 16 years ago.
I'm sorry that you lost your sister, but you had mentioned this to me once. And I think you were there or you witnessed it.
Well, I was not right where it happened, but she was living in Paris at that time. My parents were still in south of France, and I was home for the summer, working in a in a greenhouse factory. And then we got a call saying that, my sister passed away. She committed suicide, and I was the one home, and my two other sisters were away. So unfortunately, I was the one who had to give them the bad news. And then I went to Paris with my mom and had to go recognize the body. And it was kind of a gnarly experience for sure.
How old are you?
I was 18 years old.
Oh, Jesus, man. And how does that impact you?
Well, that's the end of your teenage years right there. I guess you technically 18 years old, you're considered an adult by society, but I don't think emotionally you are yet, This was really hard. You have to deal with it. You don't really have a choice. But for me, I think it's actually when everything kind of fell into place as far as my desire to pursue, skiing and base jumping at a certain level. And I remember being at her funeral and almost being like a witness to the whole scene, like it was almost like watching a movie in a way. It was weird, it's like I was there, but I was kind of detached from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And kind of seeing all that, that sadness and pain around. And I was, obviously I was really sad, but I almost felt really numb, It's almost like you get punched in the face and you don't really register that it's hurting at first. You're just kind of like, what's going on,
Yeah.
And right there, I think I kind of had a moment of clarity where I realized that, well, she didn't have these few things that gave her the desire to go beyond any kind of suffering that she was experiencing, And for me, I just blew my knee for the first time that year. And then my sister passed away and had a few other things. And so it's kind of like, even though through all these moments of struggles, the things I was looking forward to was going back in the mountains and skiing and, jumping cliffs and doing backflips. And I was like, wow, this is when I realized and I made the promise to myself that I wasn't going to put my life on hold anymore, that I already have a direction, I already know what I want to do, and that there's no excuse, delaying this anymore. I think that's when I realized that there was no point being a coward and I had to find that courage to just pursue my goals and desires as an individual because I had this higher goal almost, if that makes sense,
And you come from, your dad's a rad dude. I believe he skydived when you were growing up.
So my dad was born in 1939. To give you an idea, he still remembers hearing the Nazis walking down the street. That's how old my dad is.
I hate the Nazis.
Oh, yeah. Who likes the Nazis? Screw the Nazis.
Unfortunately, there's some people that do.
Unfortunately, yeah. But anyway, my dad grew up in that environment, and he was a war baby. And after the Second World War, it was kind of like the strong decolonization process for France. And, there was all the things like the Algerian War and the decolonization of Morocco. And then there was also the Indochina War and all these places, that where shit was hitting the fan, And the French military was still very strong in a way. So he had to do his military service. And you don't really choose where you go do your military service. And he was put in the 9th Commando, which is kind of like the equivalent of like the Army Rangers, in France.
I wouldn't say the equivalent, but if you were to compare them, that would be the comparison.
Okay, well, I guess so. But anyway, they pretty much train side by side with the French Foreign Legion, so it's pretty gnarly. And it's also a paratrooper regiment. So he was going to med school, so they took him in as a doctor, and he did a bunch of skydiving. And he only did 2 free falls at all the time. It was those automatic jumps, when you just send one guy after another jumping out of the plane with these round parachutes, and you fall about 18 feet per second with about 100 pounds of gear. So his back still hurts every day, but he has very fond memories of these times.
Was he a rad skier too? Did he like skiing the gnarly stuff that you find in Chamonix and all those places in France?
My parents were tourists. I was a tourist myself to begin with, and my dad started skiing, I think, at 36 years old, and my mom was 30 or something like that. My mother's Dutch and my dad's French, but born in the South, so they're not mountain people, but they fell in love with the mountains, and then later on, they purchased a house in the mountains because it was really this lifestyle that they wanted to live. My dad did the haute route, Chamonix-Zermatt. He started skinning and doing a lot of this stuff. And, he was never a gnarly climber, a gnarly skier, but he always had a very genuine love for the mountains. And I think that shaped kind of what I wanted to do with my life, for sure.
The best skiers in the world race at first and get the fundamentals and a solid ski base underneath them and then go off to do other things. How are you in the whole racing? Because I'm sure it's really big in France because racing is, we look at it as small in the US. It's huge over there, I believe.
Oh yeah, racing is massive in Europe, and competitions is still very valued, whether you are now on the Freeride World Tour or whether you're racing. But yeah, slalom and Super G are the foundations of it all. When I first moved there, picture this kid coming from south of France, going to boarding school to race in the Alps. I mean, that tall blonde kid that doesn't even look French, I was almost like I was a foreigner in my own country, and people were looking at me. And my first day in school, actually, a kid came up to me and he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I love skiing. I'm here to ski." And one of my first training sessions with the coach, my coach looked at me and he was like, "Wow, I've never seen somebody ski with two left feet. That's how bad I was, I was just so eager and I love skiing so much that I just wanted to ski hard and ski fast. And eventually, that coach, his name was Pascal Jacquemou, and every year I still see him when I go back to the Alps. And this guy changed my life, and he changed the way I see skiing. His brother won the Derby of La Mèche in La Grave, and I think he got second there. So incredible all-mountain skier, used to race in FIS, in FIS, and just great all-around skier. But what was great about him is that he didn't believe in just racing. A lot of racers, I'm sure you've seen that, are so psychologically rigid. They just focus on hitting gates no matter what. Yeah, and his vision of skiing was, no, if it's a pow day, we're going to go jump some cornices and cliffs, and we're going to teach you kids how to ski. And he would put gates on a big mountain face. Literally, he would set up a GS course where there would be moguls and then like a natural like quarter pipe or wind lip in the middle, and then you end up on the slope, and then he would go in the trees, and he would make us like a straight line for at least 100 feet before we would enter the course and push on our poles 3 times and skate as hard as we could so we could make sure that we'd enter the course balls to the wall. And, we're 14 years old with, 190 skis. And of course, when there would be a jump in the middle, it'd be like, okay, so it's mandatory to do a 360 on this and then a straight air on that and throw a grab. So you do whatever you want, just you got to throw that in, you're on. So he believed in this racer approach of all mountain skiing, which if you think about it, that's what big mountain skiing is. And I think he was very forward thinking at the time because not many coaches were doing that, but that was his vision of skiing. And that became what I loved about it.
And that's right about the time that Johnny Mosley does a 360 mute in Nagano, I think.
True, but if you think about it, actually, the first guy to do it before him was a French guy, Julien Régnier.
For us in the States, that really put it on the map because that made it commercial. The whole world saw it, not just me and you, but my mom and my dad. And they didn't know anything about anything in skiing, but they saw a guy grab his skis and do a 360 in the bump field, and they were like, holy shit, that's different. And I think where Julien might have done it first, the stage that Johnny did it on, Julien never played on that stage.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Johnny. It's just Julien is a friend,
For your coach, yeah, he probably saw Julien do that and was like, holy crap, we can do this kind of stuff. But for the world, it was Johnny that was the billboard for the new school. That's
true, but I think it was the same winter, but if you put things back in perspective, it was also the times of the Red Bull Snow Thrill in Chamonix and all these competitions that were all big mountain competitions where you had guys like Seb Michaud and Bruno Compagnie that were hucking backflips on 50-foot cliffs on hardpack and going balls to the wall down the mountain, So Johnny Mosley did a lot as far as the layman seeing that, but when you were immersed in the Alps culture, we had our own local heroes. I didn't even know who Johnny Mosley was until the Olympic Games when I was 14. For me, he was Seb Michaud, he was Bruno Compagnie, and then old guys like, Sylvain Saudan and Jean-Marc Boivin, and all these guys were the guys we were looking up to. And everything was becoming revolutionized at that time with guys like Pat Ferries, and all these guys are, probably unknown to a lot of Americans. But in Europe, these guys were, I remember I had my roof over my bed was covered in posters from all these pro skiers. So every night I'd go to bed, I would see a dude doing a big old backflip on a cliff. And I think that just went deep in my subconscious.
It's probably around 14, 15 that I know you get into cliff jumping and you're jumping 70, 80-foot cliffs and you eventually start taking tricks to the snow?
Yeah, pretty much. We didn't really have twin tips at the time, so I had my big GS skis, but this is when I started doing front flips at first because I was scared of backflips. I was scared of going backwards. And I broke my sternum 4 times in the first 2 seasons because nobody was really teaching us at the time. It was kind of like trial and error.
You broke your sternum 4 times in 2 years?
Yeah. It sucked. And my dad was, being a doctor, we have a saying in French like, les enfants du cordonnier sont les plus mal chaussés, which means the kids of the shoemaker are the ones with the worst shoes. And so it's kind of the same with your dad as a doctor is you're always late for your vaccinations. And when you get hurt, your dad always downplays it. And then I broke my sternum full on. At first, the first 2 times, I didn't dare to say anything because it was when I was racing. So I didn't want to be benched pretty much. So I would just go to my room and I would just do push-ups on it at night to try to desensitize it. I didn't really know it was broken, but I could feel my whole chest almost moving a little bit. But I was like, fuck it, I'll just stuff it out, And then when I broke it again for the 3rd time, and then the 4th time, it was so painful. I had to have my friends buckle my ski boots for me because I couldn't go skiing otherwise. And my dad was like, he didn't want to believe that I broke my sternum. So he was like, oh, you just strain your muscles. And then 2 months later, I was rock climbing with a friend and I could feel a little hole in my sternum, or like a little bump, not a hole, a little, I guess, divot in there. And my dad was like, oh, it was broken, but it's too late to do anything anyway. You can't do anything about it anyway. I was like, oh, well, so I guess my sternum was broken this whole time.
What kind of doctor is your dad?
My dad is an ENT doctor, ear, nose, and throat. So he's definitely not a orthopedist or whatever. But yeah, if you break your nose, he can help you out.
Well, that's good to know. I'm sure you've broken your nose before.
Oh, yeah. I broke it a couple times too.
And I'm going to take a break real quick. I'm going to talk about my sponsors. My first sponsor is Evo. And if you haven't shopped at evo.com or been to one of their stores in Denver, Seattle, or Portland, you are missing out on the best retail and online experience in the country. While that's a bold statement, it's true. Evo creates an experience like no other. The stores themselves are created to be a gathering place, an art gallery, a movie venue, and a travel base with the goal of making your adventures more fun. On the web front, Evo offers a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders over $50, and a no-hassle return policy for everything ski, snowboard, bike, skate, lifestyle, and outerwear. On top of that, for listening to the show, they're going to give you an additional 10% off your entire order. When you check out, use the code capital TPM, the number 10, all one word, and you will get that 10% off your order. My next sponsor is RESQWATER, and they are proactive recovery. What does that mean? Well, there's no drink out there that's going to hydrate you better than a RESQWATER. It's science and it works. Think of it like this. When you need a pick-me-up, you drink a soda or a cup of coffee. But when you really need energy, you grab yourself an energy drink. Well, with RESQWATER, it's a similar principle. When you need to hydrate, like when you finish a workout, get done practice, or get off the mountain or trail, skip your sports drink and drink a cold RESQWATER. There's no better choice for replacing electrolytes, and it's a difference that you can feel. I like to drink a cold RESQWATER before bed after big nights out, and it's a lifesaver. It's amazing how good I feel. Make RESQWATER work for you by heading over to resqwater.com and save 20% on a 12-pack case by entering the code RESQWATERTPM. That's all one word, and you can find that over at resqwater.com. RESQWATER is also available on Amazon and Amazon Prime. Those are my sponsors, so we'll get back into it with your life. And you're at a sport academy near Chamonix, which is where the extreme skiing scene was really founded. You're 14 to 18 in high school. What kind of kid are you? What kind of music are you into? And what do you look like?
So high school, man, I'm into hardcore metal and punk. I have long hair. I have a lot of energy.
You still have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
You're one of the more hyperactive people that you can meet, and you get really excited about an idea. And when you're excited, you can see it in your hands, in your face, in your voice, in everything that you do. So you definitely have a lot of energy.
Believe it or not, I'm a lot mellower now than I used to be. I think at 16 or 15, I was kind of scary. Then I dreaded all my hair. I was not a hippie, far from that. I was more like a metal punk kid, but Bruno Compagnie was my hero, and Bruno had these long dreads at the time. So I just dreaded all my hair, and listening to metal, and I was skateboarding quite a bit, and skiing hard. And I was the kind of kid that, you're allowed to drink in France, obviously, when you're 16 or so. So I would be the kid, chugging beers, taking my clothes, and just streaking throughout the whole party. It's almost like I was just bursting with so much energy. I didn't know how to let it out. And a lot of the time, I think it came out in some wrong ways, but I think it was so genuine and earnest that a lot of people just kind of rolled their eyes and laughed at it. And nobody ever really got pissed off at me. But I was really aggro and out of control. But at the same time, we do it with a big smile.
I'd say with some people, when they have your energy and fever for things, it looks like they're trying too hard. With yours, you can tell it's all passion and genuine. and it's mellow now, but you're always pretty excited and positive. I've never seen you down, really.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
I've only hung out with you a few times, so I can't say it's been too many, but
that's the right assessment, I think. And in school, actually, a lot of the times, when I had, some problems with whatever, whether it's homework or with people or whatever, I I always smiled, and teachers never really guessed there was something wrong, I guess, and there was nothing ever majorly wrong, but it's just, through that age, it's definitely like you go through some ups and downs, and I think I just dealt with it by smiling and just carrying on. So
you mentioned earlier, you said something about getting punched in the face, and I forget what your analogy was, but did you get in fights?
I mean, every boy gets in fights. It's kind of like the way it is, unfortunately. Like it's, I guess, 3 or 4 times throughout my whole life, but more like, a couple thugs are trying to pick on you in the street. But the problem is that I had no filter. So when they would just come up to me, and I just didn't hold back and told them to leave me alone because they were assholes. And then next thing you know, you're getting pummeled, and you're just like, oh God. But the problem is like, I didn't know how to fight either, really. So I never sought a fight, but I just always believed in saying what I think and sharing what I believe, I guess, I was not trying to be preachy, but I guess I was just always kind of
loudmouth, maybe?
Yeah, maybe a loudmouth, but maybe honest, and just, probably a loudmouth a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Were you anti-authority? Do you have any of that stance to you, punk rock style?
I think in a way, I always had a problem with authority, but I always learned to smile, say yes, and then just carry on with whatever I was going to do anyway. So like nobody would bust my balls. I didn't believe really in creating some more speed bumps or confrontation, or I didn't want to add more anchors to my life. I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, no matter what it took. If it meant manipulating the system, I manipulated it so I could do it.
Life for a teen in France in the 90s, is it all ecstasy and the discotheque and raves? What's it all about outside of school?
We drink, it was definitely, you go on a surf camp when I would be 14 and get hammered on the beach, and, but by the age of 18, when you're a veteran drinker for France, you just kind of like whatever. You just have a couple of beers to be social because you enjoy it, but that's it. You don't really drink to get hammered. But you do it at first in the discovery phase. But I grew up definitely in the time when the rave scene was blowing up in France, and I've always been terrified of drugs. I think every drug should be legal because they're going to exist no matter what, but I don't want them in my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely had a couple kids in school that wasn't necessarily close to, but that I knew that full on, took ecstasy and lost it, and I think it probably created some crazy chemical imbalance, and a couple of them ended up hanging themselves, I was always like, whoa, I'm already such a ball of overflowing emotion. I do not need to throw drugs on top of that because I'm going to be completely out of control. And so I just never dabbled into that stuff. But yeah, it was definitely around, but I just chose myself to not put myself in the circle, if that makes sense.
I think it's a great decision. I think you might want to try weed at times just to calm down with your energy, because that's not going to make you do anything crazy, but that's just my opinion. You graduate from high school around 2001 and go to a university in France. You go to a good school?
Yeah, so, you can go to university, and university is technically free, but if you want to do something different, like going to business school or this and that, these schools are all private, actually. And I was pretty much failing out of school because I just wanted to ski. And, my dad is a doctor. My older sister is an engineer in aeronautics, and she speaks 7 languages. My other sister is a lawyer in intellectual property and copyright and speaks 5 languages. My sister, who passed away, had a master in literature and a master in history, and she was going to get a master in journalism as well, and spoke 5 languages. My parents were like, what do you want to do with your life? I was like, well, I want to ski and be a carpenter. And they were like, it's not going to happen. So they were like, okay, do 1 year at university. Actually, they had me meet with a counselor who actually changed my life. I mean, many people, I think, changed my life. Or many people were really good influences in my life, I guess, And this guy was one of them. And he told me, listen, you can do anything. You could actually get decent grades in school. You just choose not to. Just get through high school, get it over with, go to university, and do at least 1 year to see if you want to pursue that. And if you don't, then quit. And my parents were like, yeah, that sounds good. But if you quit university after 1 year, you're on your own. I was like, okay, fair game. So anyway, I applied to only one business school because it was the closest to the mountains, so I could get skiing. And it was in Lyon, which is still 2.5 hours by train, but it's not too far, There's 3,000 people who taking the test, and there's only 120 spots. And somehow I got like 124. And 10 people didn't get into school. So anyway, I got in, and it was a really good business school in France. So I just went and studied there and tried to ski as much as I could. On my first year, you have to do an internship, like a sales internship. So I just worked in my friend's ski shop at the bottom of the lift in the Alps, and I skied every day. And I was working so hard that I actually blew my knee. So I blew my ACL, and that was the beginning of that crazy year, when I lost my sister, had my first season-ending injury, then I had to put my dog to sleep, and then because I had to get surgery before my finals, I failed my first year in business school, which normally, because it doesn't work like a semester program like in the US, it's a yearly program, so if you don't pass, you have to do the whole year again. I was barely passing, but given all the circumstances, the school was like, okay, normally they don't allow you to redo your year, but they were like, okay, we'll allow you to redo your first year. So I did it again. And then shortly after that, I moved to America so I could finish studying in Colorado and really ski every day.
You go from a great business school in France and you want to pick something comparable in the US. So you pick Fort Lewis in Colorado.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, it still counts. It's still a business degree.
I think they used to call it Fort Leisure, right?
Yeah, Fort Leisure. Yeah, or Fort Loser. But I mean, Fort Lewis has a really good business program, and they have a program in resort and tourism management. So I moved there. Yeah, it's not as prestigious as the school I was in France, but it was more tailored for the ski industry. That makes sense. I wasn't trying to be a pro skier at the time. I was kind of like, I already blew my knee once, and in the Alps, it's kind of like if you're not freaking on the World Cup by age 16, you blew it, Yeah. And so I was like, whatever, I'll just go to business school and work in the ski business because I love skiing. So that's how it started. And then they helped me, contacted Fort Lewis, and then I transferred all my school record to Fort Lewis, and then I kept studying there and actually learned a lot, and it was cool. But yeah, it's true that coming from a hard French business school, it wasn't too hard to graduate with honors and ski 5 days a week. So it was cool.
When do you start skydiving through all of this? Because I would think it's about to start happening if it hasn't already.
Yeah, so I always wanted to skydive, hearing my dad's stories since I was a kid. But then when I moved to the US, so I somehow within 3 months, I ended up getting sponsored head to toes for skiing. And
who sponsors you head to toe?
So I got sponsored by Fate Clothing at the time, a little company from Colorado. Is Fate Clothing, Fate.
Yeah, they used to have like the circles on the knees.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of mogul stuff, and they were sponsoring a lot of guys like Jesse Hall and all that, or they were on the US Extreme and stuff like that, the comps in Crested Butte and stuff. So Fate hooked me up with stuff, and at the time, it was cool. I was like, sweet, I got sponsored. So I got sponsored by Licky. Licky was my first ever sponsor, and I'm still with them. I've been with them for 14 years.
Wow.
Sven Brunso was a local pro skier, and he took me under his wing, and he pretty much became my big brother, and he taught me the in and out a little, as much as he could of the ski industry. And he called Lecky, and he was like, hey, I have this kid here that would be great on the team. And then they sponsored me right away, and I've been with them for 14 years. So it was Lecky, my first sponsor. Then I got Fate Clothing. I got Zag Skis, which was a little brand from the Alps that was trying to push in the US.
Were they really expensive skis?
Zag Skis were, yeah, they were like $1,000 a pair or something. It was something crazy. Then I got sponsored by, Marker, Zeal Optics. And then I had a little local ski shop that just sponsored me to help me with, whatever helmets or ski boots or things like that. So last thing I know, I'm all hooked up for my gear, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this was kind of like a childhood dream. And, I started to get pictures published in like ski magazine, and I think I got like a cover or something like that. It was cool. And now I'm sponsored. I'm going to business school. Maybe I should keep pursuing that as well and see if anything's going to pan out. And then shortly after that, they started sending me to trade shows, so I'm going to SIA, and then Sven introduced me to Shane. And instantly, anybody who meets Shane had a huge impact on anybody who would meet him, Yeah. And I met him, and instantly he's like, oh man, you're from the Alps. I love the Alps. He just got back from filming the movie Yearbook with Matchstick. And he's like, yeah, man, it's so sick over there. Like, we're skiing and ski base jumping, and Ski Patrol was helping us carry our gear, and everybody was stoked, and blah, blah, blah. This is cool. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And well, I really want to base jump too. I wanted to base jump since I was 9 years old. And Shane was like, oh man, start skydiving and get 100 jumps and then start base jumping. And so shortly after that, I blew my knee again. So I had to heal up and wait a few months and save some money. But then a year later, I got my skydiving license. And then a year after that, started base jumping.
So this is like 2007. You meet Shane and you get that inspiration and start skydiving. Base jumping starts for you around 2008. How many skydives did you have before you base jumped?
I was really eager to get started. Shane told me 100 skydives, but after 30 skydives, I ordered a base jumping parachute, and they were very hesitant to make it. Base jumping equipment manufacturers are very cautious about who they're going to make a parachute for. They want to make sure that you know what you're doing and that you actually know how to fly a parachute. And that's why they kind of have this rough rule of thumb of 100 jumps. Some people even require 200, but when I call them with 30 jumps, they're like, whoa, no. What do you want to do? And then I was like, well, Jesse Hall at the time was going to teach me. So he vouched for me, and we wrote down a whole jumping plan to tell them how I was going to get into it. And anyway, then they agreed to make my parachute. And so by the time I got it, then I did a couple skydivers with my base jumping parachute to see how it fly. And I started base jumping with 44 skydives. So less than half that was recommended. But then I went back to skydiving a lot more later. I wanted to get going. So
do you think that's because you're young, you're not as mature as you are now, you have way more energy than you have now, and you just see your goal and you're like, fuck it, I'm ready?
Yeah, kind of. But, I had good air sense at the time. I could do a double backflip, backflip the whole Mount Baker Road gap, things like that. So I was used to catching a lot of air, and I felt really comfortable in the air. So that wasn't really the issue. Falling wasn't the part I was really worried about. It was more like flying the parachute. But when you ski base jump, you're kind of landing in, for most of them, you're landing in like a big, wide open snowfield. It's not like jumping a building downtown Seattle, where you're going to have to land between a light post and a car. So I felt okay, and I did a lot of bridge jumps in Idaho off the Perrine Bridge, and you land in a big field at the bottom. And after my first day base jumping, like Jesse Hall took me there, and we did 9 jumps the first day base jumping. And my last jump of the day, I did probably like a 200-foot gainer off the bridge, and it just felt so good. It felt right, I wasn't trying to be sketchy, but I think I was feeling so comfortable, and I was so eager that I ended up doing a lot of sketchy stuff. But luckily, I got away with it.
Anybody, when they're in their 20s or 19 to 25, you take a lot more risks than you would ever take at this age, where you think back and you're like, I was lucky, nothing bad happened, and we were doing things sketchy. There was probably shit where you were driving by something, you saw it, and you were just like, fuck it, we're doing it without any planning, and you're not going to die at that point in life because you're 24, 25, right?
I was 24, yeah. I started base jumping, and then my 20th base jump was my first ski base jump off Mount Hood. I was just eager. I don't think I was getting into it with a poor plan. I was actually thinking my jumps quite thoroughly, but I was just really eager to get it done.
I would think at your age now, you're more able to say no and turn back and not jump than you would be at 24.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. That year, just a few months before the first ski base on Mount Hood, actually, I was skiing at Mount Baker with Grant Garnison, who was shooting pictures, and Dana Flair happened to be there with his filmer Rick from TGR.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got on the chairlift with Rick, and really cool guy, and he was kind of, cool for me to see a guy like Dana Flair, amazing skier, amazing air sense, but he was so thorough and calculated. And Rick was telling me on the chairlift that, yeah, Dana's been hurt quite a bit, but he's still doing it, and he's very cautious, but when he's going to go for it, he's going to really go for it. And then he told me a phrase that has stuck with me ever since, and he said, it takes a strong man to say no. And then all of a sudden, it was like an epiphany, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, it's way easier to say fuck it and go than to actually be like, you know what, it's not right, I'm not going to do it. And I think this is when I started realizing that stuff. But at the same time, because I was so amped, and it was a very dangerous time because I thought I was extremely cautious, but I think because I had a certain natural ability for it and a lot of emotional and mental comfort about it, I ended up doing a lot of sketchy stuff. But, eventually you do a lot of jumps and you learn from them and you become safer.
Yeah, I was going to say you could be extremely cautious, but with 50 jumps, skydiving and base at this point before you do your first ski base, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of situations that you would get in, which I don't know any of these situations because I would never be in them. But there's a lot of things you learn that I'm sure teach you a lot of lessons later on where, a line could look like it's tied up, but it's really, you just move your wrist and something happens that you didn't know when you were 24.
Yeah, but it's funny actually. Once I started ski base jumping, I only met Shane once, but we were talking almost every week. It was really cool. And Shane was incredible because technically he didn't really know me, but he spent the time every week to catch up and talk. And whenever I had questions, like he would take the time to walk me through it. And the first close call I got was I went back to Mount Hood, and it was my first time filming with a helicopter. So I was all amped, and I built a kicker on the cliff. The cliff was only 230 feet, and then I just skied down. It's like 20 fast GS turns, and then boosted off, did a front flip, and then when I pulled my parachute, I pulled a little early, and so the bridle that connects that little parachute, that pilot chute that pulls the big parachute out, that bridle that connects them ended up being wrapped around my arm. And then all of a sudden I'm plummeting, to the ground. And I remember Shane telling me, if that ever happens, move your arm this way, and so I moved my arm, and then my parachute opened, and I literally opened 20 feet from the ground.
Oh, Jesus.
And had a few seconds on my parachute and then landed perfectly. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, it's actually spending time to talk with Shane literally saved my life. It's actually happened on a couple of times. Like Shane's experience really, and sharing it or witnessing what he was doing helped me make it through a couple really sketchy jumps.
And that first ski base that you did was at Mount Hood, and it got a ton of press. I mean, CNN picked it up. I think it was voted best of the year for some video segment. Your first ski base, Shane is your mentor at this point. I mean, I don't know if you have other mentors, maybe Jesse, but you're talking to Shane a lot about ski basing. Has Shane passed yet?
No, it was a year before Shane had passed away. So the first base jumper I met was Shane. The first one I really talked to make a plan in jumping was Eric Rohner, and then Jesse Hall taught me. So technically Jesse was my mentor, but Shane really is the one who spent the time to talk about ski base jumping. Yeah, that was in 2000.
This was March 2009, I believe.
Yeah, he passed away March 26, 2009, and I did my first ski base on Mount Hood February 26, 2008.
And had you guys ever connected and talked about doing things together? Because it seemed like Shane's point man was JT, but with you guys having this dialogue, I'm sure it would be a dream of yours to not only just hang out with him, but to go jump something with him or ski base something with him.
For sure, it was the ultimate dream. Shane was everybody's hero, especially if you're a ski base jumper, which by then I was proud enough to be able to call myself a ski base jumper, And Shane actually called me after the Mount Hood jump because he got a ton of press. He was on CNN, Good Morning America, tons of shows. He was really cool. And Shane was like, hey man, so I have this idea for an event that I want to do a Red Bull, and I think your cliff on Mount Hood might be perfect. And could you give me some info on that? Could you meet with us on Mount Hood and go jump? He was coming up with Miles Dasher. And unfortunately, that summer I was completely broke. I had to wait tables to be able to survive, so I couldn't take a few days off to go to Mount Hood and shoot, So unfortunately I couldn't go there, but I gave him a bunch of info on how to access the cliff and all that. And I'm still kicking myself because that would have been the day I would have been able to ski base with Shane. Yeah, I didn't go. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I'm still really bummed about it, but Shane wanted to organize a slalom with a cliff in the middle and a slalom at the bottom to do what we call a blade running course. It's pretty much a slalom with a parachute open. And so he wanted to do an event where, you ski that whole slalom, ski base in the middle, and then pursue the slalom with your parachute open, and the guy who would do it the fastest would win. And then that event never came alive because then Shane unfortunately passed away, but it was Shane's idea. I think someday we should probably put that event together and call it Shane McConkey Derby or something like that. That could be cool.
Now I'm going to take a break. I'm going to talk about my sponsors. My final sponsor, brews beer, drinks beer, and has fun doing it, period. They're the 10 Barrel Brewery based out of Bend, Oregon. They live and breathe the ski and snowboard culture and support it with tasty beers like their new Goggle Tan IRA and supporting nonprofits like Jeremy Jones's Protect Our Winters Foundation. But the support of snow does not stop there. March is a huge month for 10 Barrel as they're holding their final Hella Big Air event March 31st at Mount Bachelor. Yes, they're bringing it home and it's going to be an amazing time. The weekend is full of fun and it'll be highlighted by some amazing athletes hucking themselves to get their hands on some of that $30,000 in prize money. If you're an athlete and specialize in big air, go take some of that money by making sure you're at Mount Bachelor on the 31st. And afterwards, you can join the 10 Barrel crew doing what they do best, drinking beer outside. If you ski or snowboard, support the beer that supports you, the 10 Barrel Brewery. Find out more about the Hella Big Air event and the beer over at 10barrel.com. So those are my sponsors right there. And in 2008, you're a semifinalist in the U.S. Extreme Free Ski Championships. You got a cover in Ski Magazine, so you're still skiing at a really high level. I think we met at this time.
Yeah.
We had communication. You'd been emailing, and I wanted to meet you. And I think you were coming out to Seattle. So I was like, yeah, we're going to do a tour, and I'll show you all about K2. You were coming from nowhere into the States. It was awesome. You were able to get head to toe. But for K2, I don't think it was the right fit. You were French. We were an American company. But it was evident to me right away that you had a future somewhere. You're kind of one of those guys that I'd say has a Hollywood quality to you. You always look like you're wearing makeup, but you're not. Women and men probably think you're attractive. You got that big French American personality, and then your energy as well. On top of all that, you're one of the easiest people to work with in terms of getting back email wise, and you put together ideas and content. You're always doing something to keep yourself relevant. And even back then, you were always in touch with me, letting me know what was going on. So if there was an opportunity to be on K2, you were right there. So you're a hard worker who has that quality that I knew was going to be something. You know, at this point, you've got head to toe sponsors, but I want to talk about the sponsors who are paying you now to get through those, because you've got a lot of sponsors. I hope you're able to make a lot of money from your sponsors. In terms of sponsorship in general, from brands that pay you who have a product, how much do you think you can make in a year right now that you're at your peak? Not peak, but you're at a high level in your career.
Well, it would be unprofessional for me to talk about how much I make from my sponsors.
So, I mean, if I'm going to go through and say you've Thule, Oakley, Roxa, Superdry, GoPro, Hum, Leaky, Burn, Black Crows, Dynafit, can you make 30 grand from all of those?
I can support my lifestyle. I can keep traveling, and I can put a roof over my head and support my family, if I can put it this way.
Well, that's more than 30 grand.
I'm able to do all that. I'm really fortunate.
People from the outside look at you and they might think that you're making $500,000 a year because you've got all these sponsors. I don't think that's true in terms of how sponsorship works in these games. I mean, you're going to make your money getting paid to jump off of things and people filming it. I would think the sponsorship wouldn't be the bulk of your money. So let me ask the question a different way. How much of your income does sponsorship alone represent in a year?
It's actually most of it. It's surprising because it depends. When you're a pro athlete and you don't compete anymore and you do unique projects and a lot of video content, I think the role of an athlete has changed. It's not just putting on a logo and doing cool stuff. You know, you're almost like a multifaceted consultant. You are helping on, R&D, on product, on design. You creating content. You are an advertising agency, because that's what you are. That's why companies support you and help you go on your adventures so that they can get exposure, and that's how they get a return. You also do some, stunt gigs, some commercial work, and I did a tiny bit of modeling on the side, things like that. But you pretty much end up doing a bunch of different stuff. So I think the key to being able to successfully live this lifestyle is to be versatile.
So you're just going to walk away from my question.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We're going to go to 2009.
Yep.
You have the first descent ski base jump off the Aiguille, something that I can't pronounce, in France. You're the first person to ski base jump off of the Ajax Peak in Telluride, Colorado, and you get a ton of coverage from that. Now I'll go to 2010 because we really don't have to elaborate on that stuff. I'm just kind of walking through the timeline. So a big one for you, one of the biggest of your career at this point, you ski base off the Eiger, the west wall into the north face in Switzerland. And for that one, it seems interesting to me because I believe you were somewhere else and you get a call saying, can you be in Switzerland tomorrow? We've got a window, and you're just like, I'm there. Let's do it. Is that how something like that works out? Is there a ton of planning beforehand, or is it like, oh shit, we've got the window?
It's a combination of both. I was shooting in Iceland and then went in Norway, and then I was like, I'll cruise through the Alps and do something around Mont Blanc. And the weather was beautiful, but the snow wasn't, safe enough and to do this project. And then my team manager from Elan at the time was shooting a ski movie near Lauterbrunnen, where the Eiger is near, Interlaken and all that, And he calls me, he's like, hey man, we're going to ski the Eiger for the movie, but the avalanche danger to ski the route that we want to do is too high. But if we go there first thing in the morning, it would be stable and you could ski base jump, and we have a helicopter. Do you want to do it? And so I was like, well, hold on. And then my dad was there, and I asked him, like, hey dad, can I borrow the car to go to Switzerland tomorrow? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so I told him, yeah, I'll be there. So I just jumped in the car and drove a couple hours to the Lauterbrunnen Valley, and I had a brand new parachute with me. So I jumped a couple of cliffs to fine tune my gear before the Eiger. And then, slept in the basement of a ski shop over there because it was so last minute. It didn't have hotels. It didn't have any of that stuff. And then jumped in the car, actually took the train to Lauterbrunnen, and then took a second train to the base of the Eiger, and then geared up there. Then the helicopter picked me up, dropped me on the Eiger, ski base jumped, and then did a couple more jumps, and then drove back to France, and that was it.
And that was spur of the moment, craziest base jump you've ever done to date.
I think actually the Aigri Croche was before that, and the one you were mentioning in my hometown. And the Aigri Croche was a little more intimidating because he was tons of flat light and super icy and rocky, and he had never been done. So our first descent is always a little scary, but the Eiger is still the Eiger. I mean, the Eiger means the ogre, in Swiss and in Swiss German, and it's kind of gnarly. And getting dropped up there and thinking of, of the people that had been there before and all the history of the North Wall. This was the last problem of the Alps. That's the mountain that people took forever to be able to just climb. And there I was definitely thinking about, Shane and JT and Jean-René Guévalet, who's the guy who really started pushing ski base jumping before these guys did,
Yeah.
And then last thing you know, you're up there and you're like, wow, I'm the fourth person to ever ski base jump this thing. This is full on. It felt really like following in the footsteps of your heroes. It was overwhelming. And then the other thing I thought, I was gearing up on top of the wall, and then I love food, being French. And then I put on my gear. I'm my skis, and I'm getting ready to drop in. I'm waiting for the helicopter to get in position to go. And then all of a sudden, the last thought that went through my mind is like, damn it, I forgot to eat breakfast this morning. It was a special day. I still remember it for sure.
And then the next big one you plan, you're going to be the first person to ski base off the Matterhorn. It's 15,000 feet pretty much. It's like 14,900 and change. And that's in 2011. And no one's done that. You get the call saying the window's right for this one as well. But I think you planned this one out a little more, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I guess you get on a plane and make it happen?
There was a good weather window in the Alps. So I just flew to the Alps. The classical trilogy in the Alps, if you're a mountaineer, is the Eiger, Matterhorn, and the Grand Joras, which is kind of like on the shoulder roughly of Mont Blanc, and these are the three gnarliest peaks in the Alps. And so if you do these three, it's a huge accomplishment. And after ski base jumping the Eiger, instantly you think, as soon as you land, you're like, well, what's next? And then you're like, well, I guess the Matterhorn is next, And the problem with the Matterhorn is it's just a pile of rocks. There's not that much room to ski up there, and it's pretty steep. But yeah. So I flew to the Alps. I did the Aigri Croche again because I wanted to do a ski base that I had done already to warm up. I had brand new skis, brand new boots, and I just started walking a few months before that too because I had to get another knee surgery and a hernia surgery from climbing. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to do something that I had done before. And then when we did the Aigri Croche is when we got the avalanche video that we shot with GoPro that went full on viral. But then 4 days later, the weather was good for the Matterhorn, so I drove straight to Zermatt, and Sam Antematten was going to help me get up there, but then it was the year when he was doing so good on the Freeride World Tour that he didn't have time to take me up there, but then he was like, hey, my brother is in town, and he can help you out. So I went up there with Simon and Air Zermatt, and yeah, they dropped me at the top, and ski base jumped into the north face.
Sounds like it was that easy, but you're lowered in by a helicopter. You have to get harnessed because a helicopter can't land there. It's that gnarly. And that's the easy part of this whole thing for you. You go into your in-run. It looks like one of your skis impacts a rock. The snow sinks. Your ski impacts a rock. And you're just all momentum going into a front flip over this 15,000 foot cliff. And it's the first huge close call in your life. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, that one was gnarly. I mean, that whole trip was, you go to bed looking at the Matterhorn, you go to bed with a freaking ball in your stomach, and then you're like, what am I going to do? And then the next day, I go to the helipad, and the helicopter pilot is like, well, you have a big day today, huh? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, by the way, we can't land up there. We have to lower you with a cable. So I was like, oh, man, that's another thing to deal with. So last thing you know, you're dangling from a little cable under a Llama helicopter from the 70s over the whole face of the Matterhorn. Then you're there, and Simon was on the ground already with my skis. So I get geared up, and then I look at the line, and I'm like, wow, it's all too easy. Like, something is going to be ready to bite you in the ass. This is crazy terrain. And I see all these rocks everywhere, and then I'm like, well, okay. And then I see that one diving board that, and Simon tells me, yeah, it's 150 meters vertical behind it, and then you have the whole face under, so that's the best spot to jump. So quickly, I just kind of get a feel for the snow, and I'm like, well, it's not like I can't really go and pack down a kicker on this because I'm going to damage the snow more than anything. I kind of have to ski it like it comes. But the way I looked at it is like, well, this is what we do in freeride comps, so we could do that on a ski base jump. yeah, so I was like, okay, I just got to straight line it, put my skis where I need to on the diving board, and then jump into the north face, and then probably do a front flip. That would be a good way to get away from the wall, because I definitely had an outcrop that was maybe 10 feet to clear, and then it would drop about 150 meters, which is about 450, 500 feet, So yeah, I started straight lining. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. And then the one part that got me is that little diving board was in the shade more than the rest of the face. So the snow was lighter there. So when I punched through the snow, it actually sunk in. And then I was level with the rocks right behind that. And as soon as I felt my ski sink in, I'm like, oh God, this is not good. But it's like, I think I can pull it off. But all this goes, it's a quarter second, but you go through this whole process in your head because everything goes so fast, but it's almost like time slows down a little bit too. And then, I snagged a rock with my right ski tip and it took off my ski straight off. And I was about to push for a front flip, but he was going to take me into a front flip anyway. It's like hitting a pothole with your bike. You're going to go over the handlebar. I got a lot of shit after because in the video, in the heat of the moment, I said I decided to do a front flip, but it's like, it was going to take me into a front flip anyway. What I was able to do is put a little bit of impulse from my legs to be able to kind of try to control that front flip before that front flip was going to take over me, if that makes sense. So I did my first front flip, and then right there, I was like, as soon as I got a clear shot, I got to pull my parachute because I got to have something over my head than nothing. Even if I'm not stable, I got to open my parachute. And so I did my first front flip, and then I pulled right away, and then the momentum, the inertia sent me into a second flip, but then I was like, fuck, if I go straight with my front flip, my ski is going to go straight through my line, and it's going to be a pile of fabric tangled around my ski, and I'm going to die. So I'd never done a flat spin in my life, but I did a kind of like flat spin thing around my line so I wouldn't get my ski tangled. Then my parachute opened, luckily not facing the cliff, flying away from the cliff. My lines were twisted from doing a flip around the lines. And then, untangled the lines and then flew down onto the glacier and landed on one ski, got picked up by a helicopter, flew back to Zermatt. And I was quite shaken up by this one a little bit. So I didn't base jump for about a month after that. I just skied. But it wasn't pretty and it's not how I wanted to do it, but I wasn't hurt. I didn't die. So I guess it still counts as a first,
And at this point, how many base jumps do you have under your belt? It's 2011. You've been jumping 3 years. You've done some really high-profile jumps with a ton of press that most people seem to be doing later on in their base jumping career, maybe not in age, but in jumps. For you, how many jumps do you have at this point?
I had about, 260 jumps or something like that.
So you're stacking them trying to get like 100 a year or something like that?
Yeah, about it, for sure. I was definitely very current. I was base jumping every week. I guess it was the right time to have a close call because I was sharp with my skills at the time, even though I didn't have 500 base jumps or something.
Would it benefit you to be there a day or two earlier and be able to go up and actually do some work on the feature, or is that just not even possible?
You could. It's just now looking back, in the heat of the moment, you flew the house. Well, and the day before I was ski base jumping in Chamonix and the right thing would have been to fly up there, prep a big ramp, pack the snow down, and then stay another day, then fly the next day up there, do the ski base jump, and then go home. But, you amped, you aggro, you want to get it done. And also another thing too, it's like that winter, I had only a literally $4,000 travel budget that winter. So I kind of made it fit with what I had, and that's why I love stunt gigs, because when you get to do a stunt, there's almost an unlimited budget for safety. So you can really do it super, super well, like Hollywood quality. But when you're on your own and you have limited resources, and unfortunately at that time, I didn't take the risk because of limited resources, but I think it was a combination of experience and resources at the time. And that's the reason why I didn't do it as well as I should have done it, probably.
Social media plays a huge role in building your brand, keeping your sponsors happy, and ultimately it gets you paid. Life to you is about views. You have that one skier avalanche video. It's got 9 million views. I'm sure you have other videos that have more. But when you're up there, even if you're not 100%, if you're 90%, do you even think I got to get this content to get it out so people to see? Because I would think it's got to feel pretty good when you put a video up and 9 million people see it. You're supremely confident as it is, but how does it affect your ego?
Well, you don't. So on the ego level, when the video does that well, you're proud and you're definitely comfortable with yourself. Yeah, you're proud of what you've done. to backpedal. You're in the situation, you're flying to the Alps, you're going to go do something gnarly. And I don't ever hesitate to say no. I've said no many times. I've said no sometime on with a live TV show about to shoot a ski base jump and said no and didn't do it. And actually that day when I did that, the whole face ended up 5 minutes later ripping to the ground. I mean, I want to live. Base jumping is a celebration of life, and skiing as well, and I do projects because I really inspired and really want to do it, and I have a strong desire to do it. And then, yeah, sure, making a relevant video that will hopefully do well is also an incentive that comes after. But you don't do something gnarly because you're like, oh, I'm going to get millions of views. Maybe some people do, but I don't do it like that. I don't want to. This is not how you're going to live a long time.
No, definitely not. Most people who have accidents doing these kind of things don't live. You did, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one thing we haven't talked about yet is getting into wingsuit flight. And I know in 2011, you're the first wingsuit pilot to fly from the state of Washington to the state of Oregon. I don't know what that means. You could have just gone over the border. Who knows? But how do you get into wingsuit flying?
First, you buy a small wingsuit, and then you put on a parachute and you jump out of a plane. And you do it a bunch of times. And once you've done that maybe 100 times, then you jump off a cliff with that same wingsuit, and then as you get better, then you buy a bigger and bigger wingsuit that's going to go faster and faster. It's like when you start driving a motorcycle, you're going to learn on a 125cc. You're not going to go and buy 1,000cc right away. And so it's kind of like the same with wingsuits. You kind of step it up a little by little. And every time you get a new wingsuit, you spend a lot of time jumping it out of a plane before you're going to do some jumps out of paragliders or cliffs or whatever with it,
I've always looked at it as progression, but I don't understand the sport. So really how I look at it is probably wrong. But it seems like you start with skydiving, then you progress to base jumping if you want to go that route. You ended up going to ski base because there are a lot of different niches. And then it seems like everybody progresses to want to pilot a wingsuit. I guess that's the ultimate in flight more so than anything else. You have that actual tracking where you can see you getting the lift off the cliff or off the wall and heading out. Is it something that takes over wingsuit flight, or is it just another thing you do and you don't do it all the time? Or how does that work?
For me, I started base jumping just because I wanted to ski base jump. That was the main thing. Yeah, I wanted to do regular base jumping too, but ski base jumping was the main goal. And then as you get started and you start jumping and you become a proficient jumper, you kind of want to do a bunch of different things. And so I've started flying wingsuits and stuff like that too, but it's not my specialty. I think ski base jumping is still, for me, the best kind of jumping. I love ski base jumping so much. And a lot of people would disagree. For them, it's more flying a wingsuit. And Shane was incredible because he was great at all of them. JT, same thing. I can fly a wingsuit. It's not my main thing. But when it comes to ski base jumping, yeah, I'm going to ski base for sure and do it seriously.
The highlight for 2012 is you get your wife pregnant. That means you had sex, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And when that happens, do you and your wife talk about the risk that you are putting yourself in on a trip-by-trip basis, that you have a baby on the way? Or is that just not something that's talked about? It's just understood that that's who you are?
Yeah, I think it's understood that's who I am. When we were dating before we were married and all that, she even said, she's like, even if you die, maybe we should freeze some of your sperm because I still want to have your kid, even if you're not around anymore.
Huh.
I'd be like, oh, okay. So she always accepted that.
Did you do it? Did you freeze some?
No, I didn't do it actually. And then yeah, it wasn't actually planned. And she got pregnant, and we're like, yeah, let's do it, And then yeah, sure. I was actually the one, I think, that was putting myself in check a little more and trying to be a little more careful while doing it. If you can say that, it's kind of weird to say that you're careful when you ski base jump, but you can do it.
You can be as careful as you can.
Exactly. It's almost like being an insurance agent. It's all about risk assessment.
And so for risk assessment, stepping into 2013, your wife's expecting in about 3 months. It's March 27th. Is that the anniversary of Shane's death?
That's interesting. Yeah, it was the day after Shane's anniversary of his death. Yeah.
And you have, I won't say a close call because it's much worse than a close call. You have a terrible accident. And where are you and what happens?
So I had a good season, but I did some cool stunt gigs and some, part of a ski movie, blah, blah. But my big goal for this year was to ski base jump the Pointe d'Arreux. The Pointe d'Arreux is a peak right in front of Mont Blanc, and it's in the REV mountain range. And this is where Pierre Tardivel, who's a legendary guide in the Alps. He's done over 80 first descents in the Alps and the Himalayas. And he did the first descent of that peak in 2006. And at the end, obviously, he had to do a bunch of rappels to be able to ski all the way down to the valley. But there's also a 700-foot cliff that is perfect there. You could just, ski straight off of that, open your parachute and fly away. So I'd been looking at that for about a year. And then I went to the Alps in January and I tried it. I actually climbed to the top and the avalanche danger was too high. So I turned around, skied back down. I was like, okay, I'll just come back in the spring and get it done. And then in March, my climbing buddy in the Alps, Stefan, and we fly together. He's the guy following me in the avalanche video.
Okay.
Stefan's like, hey, dude, come back. Conditions are great. And we got the next week is looking good. And snow is melting fast. So we got to get it done as soon as possible. I was like, okay, cool. So I just booked a ticket, flew to the Alps the next day pretty much, and showed up, climbed that peak. So we woke up at 2 a.m, started climbing at 3. It takes 5 hours to get up there. We got up there at 8, started gearing up. I was ready to drop in around 9. And we could tell as we were climbing that there was a little bit of wind picking up, but it was just kind of like random gusts here and there with big lulls in between. So nothing unmanageable. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of wait for a big lull and then you go. You literally measure on your watch, how long the lulls are and how long the gusts are, and you kind of make an average of that. So you kind of know what window you have, But I knew the weather was going to change around noon or 1 p.m. So that's also why I wanted to jump before 10 o'clock in the morning to give myself a little bit of a margin.
Yep.
So when I got up there, we could see there were a couple of birds that were flying down by the cliff at the bottom. And you have to ski to put it back into perspective. It's the start of the face is 45 degrees. So it's, fairly steep and 4,000 feet. And then the last maybe 500 feet is really flat actually. And then you have the cliff, but it's kind of like a diving exit after a knob. So you don't really see after a roll. So you don't really see the edge of the cliff. So you kind of to ski this really slow, almost piece your way down the mountain. It's like the opposite, like a real free ride place. This was almost like a true a ski mountaineering mission with a base jump at the end. And anyway, so I got to the top and then the bottom, I could see a couple birds flying by the cliff. So that was definitely a sign that there was some wind. They weren't even flapping their wings and they were staying up. So obviously some kind of thermal is pushing them up. And my friend Stefan was going to speed fly behind me and he was like, I'm not going because of these birds. This is a really bad sign. The wind's not good. And I was like, I respect it. And we've had many situations where I could go and he couldn't or vice versa. So I was like, I had seen conditions like that on a jump in Iceland before. And so I was like, okay, there's definitely some wind, but the velocity that I'm going to have by jumping off the cliff is going to probably overpower the wind or give me a slight off heading, but nothing too major. I think I can do it, but I respect if you don't want to go. And I was like, okay, all right. It's like, okay, I'll see you at the bottom. So then I start dropping in, skied the whole thing. And the last 500 feet when I'm picking up speed to get off the cliff, you created your own wind pretty much by going fast, but couldn't feel that the wind was picking up. And they could see it from the top, but they couldn't tell me anything because it's not like I was skiing with an earpiece,
Right.
And they could see that the spray from my skis was being blown straight to the side. And they're like, oh shit, that wind is picking up quite a bit. So I picked up some speed, jumped, did a front flip, got away from the cliff, and there was a big rock spire on the right and a rock spire on the left. So it was kind of like jumping between rock spires. And that wind was blowing from the skier's right to the left. And so with hitting that ridge, it creates kind of like a invisible eddy, almost like, in the river when the current goes over a waterfall and then it goes back up on the side. So the wind was doing the same thing, but you can't see it because the wind is an invisible force. So that thing, me going forward, my parachute coming out, you can tell as I'm throwing my parachute out, that little parachute that pulls the big one is blown fully to the side. So my parachute opened facing to the right, the rock spire, and because I was moving forward, it twisted my lines. And I packed my parachute for a very slow opening, and because the cliff was 700 feet and I was coming fast. And so anyway, then I opened facing the cliff, and a second and a half after my parachute opened, I snibbled way down, and then I slammed straight into the cliff. And it knocked me out. I think it broke my femur right there. And then I hit the cliff about 4 times.
How fast do you think you're going when you hit the cliff?
I had just slowed down a bit. I'm thinking probably at least 50 miles per hour, probably.
Okay, so it's a pretty bad car accident.
Yeah, pretty bad for sure. Just straight body slam into a rock going 50 miles per hour. So, but luckily it's weird. Like my feet actually hit a tiny little 3 square foot patch of snow that I think that absorbed a little bit of impact before hitting, but it's still a really big impact. So I hit the wall 4 times, but then I think because my lines were twisted, I was completely out, so I couldn't give any input in there. But I think because of the twist in the lines, it probably pulled on one side more than the other of the parachute. So the parachute turned around And then I flew 4,000 feet completely unconscious, like in and out of the clouds, all the way into the valley floor. And then there was an interstate and power lines and houses and a little field. And then I crashed in the forest right before all that, which out of all the landing areas is probably one of the best ones. And it collapsed my parachute, tore some of the part of it. And then I fell another probably 50 feet onto dirt.
So wait, you get like hung up in the trees at all and then you fall, or?
No, I just went straight through them. And I think the parachute slowed me down a little bit, but then the last 50 feet, there was nothing slowing me down. I just went straight into dirt.
But you're a sack of potatoes, right? You're totally out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm out. And luckily, I crashed like 5 minutes away from a firefighter station. And within 5 minutes, 13 firefighters showed up. The helicopter landed in the field, rushed, and came to check on me. And I was completely out, but I was still breathing. They thought I was dead after I hit the cliff, and especially after the landing. But somehow I was, still breathing and moaning and making noises. And so they called the French police that does the rescue in the mountains. It's called the PGHM. It's the gendarmerie. They're the guys that go pick up all the climbers. And anyway, I crashed right in their helicopter path. 20 minutes later, they picked me up with a helicopter and brought me to Annecy. And then I woke up 3 days later in the hospital there with a brand new femur. And I had brain bleeding in the front of my brain, in the frontal lobe, and in the back. And I had 3 days in a coma as well.
Did it change you as a person at all? Do you notice anything different?
Yeah, I mean, you're never the same really when you come out of a coma. You know.
I've never been in one.
Well, don't do it. It's not good. Yeah. I mean, my dreams were awesome. I was skiing all this powder and doing big old backflips off cliffs and stomping my landings and skiing away. It was great. But then, you wake up and then the nurses are freaking out and they tell you to calm down because your brain is bleeding and you can get some seizures and stuff. And the first thing I think is like, I don't care about any of that. I need to go home. My baby's about to be born. Because I left 3 weeks before the due date. It was my last project. And the day leaving, my wife was having pretty bad contractions. And I was like, I will cancel my flight right now. And she was like, no, just go for it. I'll be fine. And I was like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, go for it. So I went to the Alps and did it and then crashed. And anyway, so I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and I couldn't fly home because my brain was bleeding. But then the brain bleeding stopped and flew home and made it home on time, like 6 days before the birth of our kid. So that was good.
And that's right. And how long does it take you to get to be a normal human being again? Because it's not like you get home and you're normal.
Well, it was, especially the frontal lobe is the part that controls all your emotions, which is a really bad part of your brain to hurt when you have a newborn. And Soren, our son, was the easiest baby. He was sleeping through the night after 6 weeks, and we put him in his own room after 8 weeks. But still, you're out of a crash. And plus, I didn't trust myself holding the baby because my left arm was somehow lost some dexterity. And I couldn't change a diaper for like 2.5 months. And my wife did everything. I was planning on being super dad, but all of a sudden, I'm like a second kid for her. So it took me 3 months and a week to be able to walk. But then I started training like crazy. I mean, I started training even before I started walking, but not putting weight on my bad leg, And 4 months later, I started skydiving again in Caphausen with Andy Farrington and all these guys. It was cool. And then 6 months later, for my 30th birthday, I was in Europe for a trade show with a sponsor. And so I took a couple of days and went to Lauterbrunnen and base jumped off some cliffs in Switzerland on my birthday. And then it took me about a year almost to ski base jump.
Was there any fear when you're getting back on the horse, or is it, this is what I do, or you have to talk yourself into it? What goes through your head now?
Oh man, it was so hard because even though I still don't remember the crash, I just have weird flashbacks, or parts of it that I remember, but I don't remember hitting the cliff or anything. But I think my body does. And there's something to be said about the cell memory in your body. Because when I would start base jumping, sometimes I'd be alone and hike up in the morning, top of the cliff, and everything's looking great, weather's perfect, and somehow you cannot relax. And a few times I just hiked back down because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't base jump. And then one day I was like, oh, screw this. Just stop being a wimp. Just go and get it done. And I remember I was on top of a cliff and I hope nobody was hiking around because I was literally just screaming at myself like, just do it. Come on. Be a man, And then I just threw myself off the cliff and then just started doing it over and over. And it was definitely difficult. And skiing was difficult too because the femur is such a big bone and you have so much muscle around it. Like the bulk of my muscles came back pretty quickly, but the finesse of the small twitch and muscle control took a while. Like I would be skiing in the ski area, no problem, just on a groomer. And then I would cross my skis out of nowhere and eat it, and be like, what the hell is happening? Then I started doing that less and less. I started able to control my left leg better. But then when I went and did my first ski base jump, it was so weird to be on top of a ski base jump and being an expert skier and base jumper and being worried about crossing your skis. But yeah, no, anyway, did it and it was fine. And then after that, it's not like I started doing, double backflips right away and this and that. Well, I went to an event in China actually after Switzerland, and it was a 1,200-foot bridge. So I did some double backflips and all that off it because I had a ton of altitude. But on lower objects, I was a little scared to do that. So I just kind of like stuck to basics, like, straight airs on ski base jumps and skiing fast. And it's weird because within a short period of time, you have to rebuild all your skills and your confidence back that it took you years to be able to develop in the first place. And you're trying to get all that back in a few months. So that was the really hard part of it.
The beauty of it is you learned in a really quick time.
Yeah.
You didn't do the necessary amount of jumps or anything. You're all about doing it fast.
You have a good point. You're clever. No, I was thinking, I guess, you don't become a pro skier in 6 months. It takes you a long time. And so it was kind of hard to just, rebuild that trust and confidence into my skiing again, And then the hard part too was thinking as far from the coma, like my depth perception was a little different. And I noticed myself when I would do flips and this and that, I could do it, but I wasn't as precise as I used to be. But then by doing it over and over again, eventually you get it back, So it's just going back to paying your dues again.
Well, here's a conversation that's not easy, but I know I've talked to you about death before. I can't really remember the conversation. It was when I stayed at your house in Bend not too long ago. And I guess conversations after 10, I'm not really going to remember too much. But I remember talking about death and more death with just you if something were to happen. And it seemed like you were almost of the aspect of like, if something were going to happen, sure, you're going to feel bad for your family, but you're also totally stoked with the life that you led. And that's just how it is. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, in a way it is. Obviously I want to watch my son grow up to be a man, and he's 4 years old and he's dropping into the 6-foot half pipe on his skateboard. So I think some promising things are coming, and I want to be there for my family, and I want to enjoy good food and good wine for a long time. But yeah, I think when you do this stuff, whether you're a mountain climber, whether you're a guide or you a guy like Jimmy Chin and you're going to go climb the shark fin in India, or whether you are a big wave surfer like Garrett McNamara, it's like obviously you want to live, but you also come to terms with your own mortality. You learn to accept it because, sooner or later, we all have an expiration date. It's just the way it is. And what do you do in the meantime? Do you do the stuff that actually really fulfills you as an individual, or do you just not do that out of fear and then die anyway? It's kind of, I think for me, there's not really a question there, It's always hard when you obviously experiencing the death of people around me and, and family members.
How many people do you know that have, you guys call it going in, I believe. How many people do you know that have gone in from your sport?
You mean just on base jumping or skiing, base jumping, climbing, everything?
I'd say your sports that you're personally friends with.
So people that I know and I'm friends with, I think maybe around over the years, I think maybe 40.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy. That is absolutely insane.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's like, it's kind of like, you kind of try to keep track a little bit at first, it's weird, just try to collect some data a little bit,
Yeah.
But then eventually you get to the point where it's just like, there's no point doing this because I'm just torturing myself, and it's just, I think when you lose a friend or somebody that doing this stuff, and some of them, it would be like doing something different, like paragliding, not base jumping, but it's still related, it's an air sport or something like that, and then you always have like the weird thing, like a friend dying in a car accident or something like that. But I guess when it happens to with skiing and jumping, you kind of have to take a step back and just look at the facts and be like, what happened? What did they do wrong? Or what did they do right? And what went wrong? And you just kind of, when people pass away, you have to learn from it. Otherwise, it's pointless,
Does it get easier after 40?
I think it's not necessarily the amount of friends losing. It's hard. It's hard. Sometimes you feel like, you kind of feel like you have a number on your head and you're like, oh shit. But now it's weird because that feeling kind of comes and goes. I think what's the hardest is the longer you do it, the more you know about it. So the more you know about things that can go wrong. But it's the same thing, you look at, base jumping is very trendy. So a lot of people talk about that and think about that. But like you grow up in the Alps, it's the same thing with mountain guides, They go out every day in the mountains with people that are not skilled or experienced, and people rely on their experience for their safety, and the guys rely on his experience for his own safety. And then he's still trying to go home at the end of the day or the next day to go back to his family. It's the same thing. It's all about just risk assessment and fear management, and then just doing the right thing, and keeping your skills sharp.
I have more, but I'm not going to go into it. I was going to badger you about money and more things like that. I won't. What I am going to do is get into inappropriate questions. It's something that went away from the show for a little while.
Yes.
And I brought back, and I didn't have anybody record for you because I decided I would ask you the inappropriate questions. I'm going to ask you 3 right now.
Okay.
Number 1 is you're known for sending the most disgusting text messages. And when I say you're known, you're at least known by me, because any text that comes from you, I once watched a video you sent me in front of my child. It was a video of a person pouring about 8 different boozes into a glass. Looked like they were mixing a cocktail. Cut to the finale. Coming into frame is a huge uncircumcised penis that stirs the drink. My kid thought it was pretty funny or pretty gross. I was shocked and laughed. What is the grossest or funniest thing that you have ever seen like that? Because I'm imagining you have hundreds of these things on your phone.
First of all, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's probably my
your wife.
Yeah, it's probably my wife that sent that to you.
She mistexted, yeah.
She's got a nerdier sense of humor than me. I don't know, man. The funniest one is there's this video. It's really funny. There's this chick that puts whipped cream on this other chick's butt, and then the chick farts, and then the whipped cream goes splashing in the other chick's face, and that just gets me every time. It's so funny.
That's a great answer for question number 1. Number 2 is, I guess, a little more serious. You put yourself at great risk a lot. You also put others at great risk, I would think, because I think a lot of the ideas for your projects and things that maybe other people are involved in come from your brain, because I know you're always thinking of new things to do. Have there ever been any instances where someone's been hurt or something's gone wrong and you look at it as, this is my fault that happened to them?
No, actually, no, because especially ski base jumping, already even within the base jumping community, a lot of people don't want to ski base jump because, first of all, you got to be an expert skier and base jumper, and so that kind of like weeds out a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then within the people that have the skills, a lot of people don't necessarily accept the risk of ski base jumping. The one thing that I was worried about is if I ski base jump and somebody at the ski resort, especially in Europe, because you're allowed to go out of bounds, is just going to follow my tracks, not knowing where they're going, and then go off a cliff. I was like, oh my God, that would be something I was afraid of.
But you'll never hear about that, most likely, so you're good.
The spots that we ski are so hard to access, so once again, that kind of like prevents a lot of people from going there. But actually, there was a French DVD that was coming out on safety in the Alps and avalanche danger and not following other people's tracks. And so I actually gave them some of my images to show people like what the kind of terrain that you would go to if you just follow tracks of somebody without thinking about it. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to be proactive through that. But a lot of the time, it's like, seriously, like if people are going to ski the places where I go, they got to really, really, first of all, know how to get there and really, really want to do it. So I'm not too worried about that, because it's not like grabbing your motorcycle and hitting a jump in like a residential neighborhood or something like that. You know, it's not something as easy as that. I'm not too worried because these are really hard things to do and really hard places to go. So it's like if you climb Everest and you're worried about, or you go climb there, like once again, like Jimmy Chin, you know, climbing the shark fin. It's like him climbing the shark fin. Is that going to inspire like a dude from Iowa to go and climb the shark fin? Like maybe that will inspire him, but for him to just go there and put himself in this situation, he's going to have to put in a lot of years of training and getting the right money to do it and equipment and this and that to be able to actually even get there, you know?
Yep.
So I think what I'm doing is different than these incredible mountaineers, but I think it's a similar kind of setting that it's not approachable by really everyday people, I guess, without wanting to sound arrogant.
I totally agree. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that part, but yes, okay. I do agree.
Cool.
My final inappropriate question, I would say base jumpers, wingsuit pilots, the ones that I've been around, are very calculated when they're packing their chutes. And the rest of the time, it's hold my beer and watch this. And it's a pretty loose group. And it may not be that they're all crazy partiers, but they all have big personalities and they all want to go big. And what's the most insane thing that you've seen out with a crew where you guys the next day were like, wow, we really did that and got away with it?
I don't know if it's, once again, from doing a lot of ski base, because a lot of the time I'm kind of like in random weird places kind of by myself doing this. So I didn't really witness that in my circle, but this year I went to the Turkey Boogie in Moab, and so for Thanksgiving, a lot of base jumpers get together in Moab to get a bunch of jumps in, you know?
Yep.
And they had a fundraiser / raffle for search and rescue, actually at a bowling alley in Moab, and we had a big party there, and it was kind of funny to see so many base jumpers in the same room, and they had the horrible idea to put a mechanical bull in there. And last thing you know, there was this guy who was kind of like a slightly overweight base jumper, and he just took off all his clothes and rode the bull, and that was pretty cool.
Okay.
That was pretty funny. But aside from that, I mean, you know, once again, I think to go back to my childhood, like trying to stay clear of kind of like, you know, drugs and stuff like that. And in action sports, there's definitely, you know, some people that enjoy that stuff. I just kind of keep myself away from that still, you know. So I luckily I haven't witnessed too many weird, crazy things on this side.
Well, we'll leave it at that. Well, I want to thank you a ton for your time. I love hearing your stories, and I think everybody's going to enjoy hearing it.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and I hope I'm not giving anybody some bad ideas.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
And if you're going to do dumb stuff, just be smart about it. That's, I guess, what I want to end on.
So that was time with Matthias Giraud, and he is a Frenchman. He's one of those guys, when you're hanging out with him, he makes everybody feel like they're really funny because he laughs uncontrollably at just about anything. His enthusiasm's infectious, and he's really one of a kind. I should also mention that I've never been to France, and next week, we're going to keep with the base theme. We have Matt Gertis, the founder of Squirrel Wingsuits, and that's a company that really changed the wingsuit game, and they've branched out to take over a bunch of different categories in the world of parachutes, base jumping, all kinds of shit I don't know. He has some crazy base experience as well. He's one of the top athletes in that world, and he's not your stereotypical base jumper, for whatever that means. We'll talk to Matt next week. Until then, please review me on whatever platform you listen to me on and tell your friends about the show. Finally, I want to thank my sponsors, Evo, RESQWATER, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. They make this show happen. So do you. So thanks, everyone, and have a great week.